Euphoria on the streets of Egypt. Hundreds of thousands of people flooded Tahrir Square in celebration after 18 days of peaceful protests there. Demonstrators continue to celebrate the departure of Mr. Mubarak into the night, dancing, chanting slogans and singing songs. Well, the end of the president's 30-year rule has been welcomed by the Egyptian opposition, as well as leaders around the world. Mohammed El-Baradei, the head of Egypt's National Association for Change, called Friday the greatest day of his life. And Egypt will never be the same again, says US President Barack Obama, but he and other world leaders have warned that this is just the beginning of change in the country. And after Egypt, after Tunisia, all eyes on Algeria this Saturday as pro-democracy protesters plan a rally there in the capital, Algiers. That comes in defiance of a government ban on demonstrating. Could the unrest in Egypt spread to other parts of the Arab world? Hello and welcome to France 24. Many thanks for joining us for this special programme devoted to the events in Egypt. And we start, first of all, in Cairo, where the city centre is still packed with people celebrating an historic 24 hours for the country. This Saturday morning, as you can see in these live pictures from Tahrir Square in the centre of the city, many are still celebrating the departure of President Hosni Mubarak, who had ruled Egypt for the past 30 years. People are gathering in the centre of the capital in large numbers this Saturday, as you can see. That's despite many of them having been up all night celebrating. And we're still getting reports from the AFP news agency that the military in Cairo are beginning to remove the barricades from Tahrir Square this Saturday morning. Well, a little earlier on, we spoke to our reporter Melissa Bell, who's in Tahrir Square in Cairo for us this Saturday morning, and she told us a little more about what's going on there now.
Clean-up operation is beginning. In fact, you can probably just see it getting underway behind me. Trucks have arrived to try and clean up, but not just people who work for the local authority, but many volunteers have arrived. They've come, some of them said to me this morning, we've come because we want to show the world that we're good people. We had our protest here and now we want to leave Tahrir Square clean. Now, very interesting this morning, all sorts of discussions going around all around the square between protesters. Some believe that it's time to pack up and go and are beginning to do so. Others are saying that they should stay, that they need firmer guarantees about what sort of transition is coming and that it's too soon to leave this square. I listened to a debate between two protesters just a short while ago. A third was standing between them and he looked at me and said, there you go, that's freedom. And at least what we're seeing here in Tahrir Square this morning is for the first time Egyptians talking amongst themselves about how to proceed, and for them that is something new and something very important.
Well, on Friday night, fireworks lit up the sky in Tahrir Square as hundreds of thousands of people danced, wept and prayed following the president's resignation. That came after 18 days of peaceful anti-government protests, and Mr. Mubarak surrendered power to the Egyptian military. Well, many of those celebrating in the square can't remember a time when Hosni Mubarak didn't rule Egypt. He has, after all, been in power there for 3 decades. For them, then, Friday was an astonishing day. Let's have a listen to what they had to say.
I'm so happy. Everyone in Egypt is happy now. A new change, freedom and democracy, everything beautiful. Today we feel this country is really ours.
Great, it's a great feeling. The people did this and the people deserved it, and we gotta thank him for what he did or what he didn't do, but thank you, just leave.
This is a message to any leader who will rule any country, not just Egypt, that people can unseat officials through peaceful revolution without destroying anything, that people can get rid of ruthless leaders.
For killing every single person in this country. Sorry, I'm so overwhelmed.
Well, the president's 3 decades of rule in Egypt came to an end with a short, simple statement. It fell to the newly promoted Vice President Omar Suleiman to address the nation on state television, telling Egypt and the world that the protesters had got their way.
In the face of these difficult circumstances in the country, the President Hosni Mubarak has decided to step down as head of state. and to entrust to the Army's Supreme Council the affairs of state.
Well, Mr Mubarak's departure has left a new man in charge in Egypt, Field Marshal Mohammed Hussein Tantawi, who's chairman of Egypt's military council. The 75-year-old veteran, who's been defence minister since 1991, has always been considered a close associate of Mr Mubarak. When the military took power on Friday, they quickly moved to reassure protesters that they'd respect the people's demands. The military have been hailed as a unifying force in Egypt, and they're seen as less brutal than the Interior Ministry police. Analysts think that could mean Mr Tantawi enjoys something of a honeymoon as he takes over the reins of power. But a leaked US diplomatic cable from 2008, recently published by the WikiLeaks website, did describe Mr Tantawi as focused on maintaining the status quo and resistant to change. Well, Mr Tantawi is the head of the Armed Forces Supreme Council, which is now in charge of Egypt. After Mr Mubarak's resignation, a military spokesman appeared on state television praising Mr Mubarak's contributions to the country. And he also promised that the army would not act as a substitute for what he called a legitimate government.
The Supreme Council of the Armed Forces will, at a later time, issue statements which will define the steps, procedures and provisions to be taken, emphasizing